Go with me real quick to Hebrews 6. Yes. Hebrews chapter 6. What's this? This is the thing I love about the Bible. Because the New Testament is the best commentary on the Old Testament. Best commentary on the Old Testament. So now the writer of Hebrews gives us insight into this picture here in Genesis. It says, for when God made a promise to Abraham, because he could swear by no one greater, he swore by himself, saying. Now watch this. Because one of the things I left out is when they made oaths and covenants, as they passed through the pieces, they would swear on Jerusalem or swear on this. They would swear on something greater than themselves, on their God or something. And so here it's saying when God walked through, he looked around and he said, now who am I going to swear on that's better than me? Let's see. Let's see. Well, no one fit that bill. I guess it's just on me. So God swore by himself.
Good.
Now watch this. Watch this. Go to the next one. I'm condensing for time. I'm going to come back and next week and go a little bit more deeper in this. But I want you to leave out seeing this. Verse 16. It says, for men indeed swear by the greater, and an oath for confirmation is for them an end of all disputes. Thus, God determining to show more abundantly to the heirs of promise the immutability of his counsel. Let's break that down. Let me read that again. For men indeed swear by the greater, and an oath for confirmation is for them an end of all dispute. So when a man, again, this is foreign to us because our oath, our words mean nothing. Right? But in those days, like if you look in Exodus, you look in Leviticus, in the law, one of the things was, like, for instance, I think it's Exodus 20:11. If you lent somebody your animal, and that animal was stolen or died or something for some reason, and the person you lent it to, if they swore an oath saying, listen, I ain't had nothing to do with it, I don't know who stole it, I don't know why it died, you had to accept that man's oath. Because men didn't play with oaths. And that's hard for us to grasp. That's why the concepts of covenant are difficult for us to embrace. So an oath of confirmation is for them an end of all dispute. So God swore, he made a promise, and he gave an oath. He gave his word. Why? It says, thus God, determining to show more abundantly to the heirs of promise. God swore an oath for the purpose of demonstrating to you and I as the heirs of the promise in Abraham through Christ. The abundance to the heirs of the promise, the immutability of his counsel. Immutability. That's a mouthful. Immutability. Sounds like something you need to get a prescription for or something, right? Well, you got immutability. Immutability. What does immutability mean? It's not going to change. He's going to change his mind. He wanted to demonstrate to us that what he promised to do, he's able to do. What he says, he will do. He cut this covenant of grace for you and I so that we would always know and understand. He ain't an ending here. He's not repenting. He's not changing his mind. And oh, by the way, it ain't based on you. Watch this. He confirmed it by an oath. Watch this. Next slide. Hebrews 6:18. That by two immutable things, his promise and oath, and the fact that it is impossible for God to lie. These two immutable things. God made a promise and an oath, and he can't lie. God made a promise with an oath, and he can't lie. He made a promise and an oath, and he can't lie. That by these two things, which will not change, heaven and earth shall pass away before one jot or tittle. It can't change. because he won't change. Watch this. We might have strong what? Consolation. Who have fled for refuge to lay hold of the hope that is set before us. Where do we see this picture portrayed in the New Testament? Because if you read through Galatians, it talks about this. We don't have time. We're going to pick up some of this next week. When the Bible gives us the picture of Jesus dying on the cross, how many crossings does the Bible tell us? You think that's all the Romans did at a time? They just did 3 at a time? Hundreds. But the picture, the imagery that God gives us is an imagery in which there is a thief on one side and a murderer on another, with Jesus in the middle. And blood is being shed. Wow. God. Then all of a sudden Jesus says, Father, Father, why hast thou forsaken me? He is confessing there's an exchange going on between the Father and the Son, having to do with he who knew no sin becoming sin for us. And then when Jesus dies, what are the last words we hear when Jesus dies? He says, it is finished. It is finished. What's finished? See, because the covenant that was cut with Abraham was a type and a pattern. Right? It was Abraham as a beneficiary. And Galatians talks about us coming into that covenant of Abraham. And it was a covenant that was not contingent upon Abraham keeping it. See, the law of Moses, the covenant of Sinai, was contingent upon Israel keeping it. That's what I said. If you don't understand covenants, you get stuff twisted. The covenant of Sinai, the covenant of Moses, the law, if you do good, you get good. You do bad, so sad. Right? That's not the covenant we're under. And what a lot of Christians do is they bring the terms and conditions of that covenant and insert it in the framework of this covenant of grace. And so because of this covenant of grace, you and I have no obligation to keep. Woo! My God. That's why he who knew no sin became sin for us, that we might be made the righteousness of God. You couldn't make yourself right. You couldn't keep yourself right. You couldn't do right. You still can't do right. Now watch this. Watch this. Are y'all still with me? Yes, sir. Come on. So let me hit you with this. So listen, God has committed himself to us in a binding, perpetual, eternal covenant that he has assigned himself as the full owner and responsible one for its execution. We are just the beneficiaries of it if we have faith, if we trust it, if we have reliance in it. I can't be operating this covenant and trying to operate under the terms and conditions of the Sinai covenant under the law. It don't work. That covenant had sacrifices, bulls, goats, and the sprinkling of the ashes of the heifer. Could never make the comers thereunto clean as pertaining to the conscience. That covenant was weak and insufficient. This foreshadowing of the covenant established with Christ completes and fulfills all of our needs. So when I understand that faith, trust, reliance, confidence doesn't become a word that I got to muster out. It's all done. I just have to position myself to receive. What's this? 2 Timothy 2:13 says this. It says that we are unfaithful. He remains what? Because he can't deny himself. He committed himself. So even when we don't do right, he will do right. Because the terms of the covenant had nothing to do with your performance. It had everything to do with what Jesus did. Got in. Here's what I want us to rest on. 2 Corinthians 1:18. 2 Corinthians. Verse 18, watch this. But as God is what? Our word to you was not yes and no. For the Son of God, Jesus Christ, who was preached among you by us, by me, Silvanus, and Timothy, was not yes and no, but in him was what? Yes. Now watch this, verse 20. Let's read verse 20 together. Y'all ready? Verse 20, let's read. It says, for all the promises of God in him are yes, and in him, amen, to the glory of God through us. What promise has God made to you? God said that because of this eternal covenant that I've established, that had nothing to do with your ability to be faithful to keep it. All of my promises to you, everything I've decreed, I've spoken, I've said, for you, my answer already is yes. Already it's yes. Already it's yes. Listen, that's different than naming and claiming. That's different than naming and claiming. I can claim the promises, not what I want. Come on. All of the promises, not what I want.
Well, you said something now.
That's good teaching.